Hey everyone, this is Leon Scorpius, and we're back with Group Chat.
Woo!
I've got the Tay Plays crew with me today, and we're going to talk more about video games. So, as promised, we want the audience to know a little bit more about ourselves, and the opening topic for this Group Chat is the topic of video games as an escape. I think it's no surprise when we mention that as gamers, we're a little more on the older side. We're probably on the higher end of the millennials, so we've been around. If you remember from the first group chat, we've played the original Nintendo games. We played even the consoles before that. And so we've had a lot of experience for gaming. And as adults, we're still gaming. And you're finding this as a mainstream. Your fathers and maybe even your grandfather might be playing some Call of Duty. I mean, I think that it's something that's truly become a cultural practice. And I think that for a lot of people, one of the reasons why gaming became so important, especially I would say the last 2 decades, is that life sucked for one reason or another, whether it was the recession, whether it was just growing up being an outsider. There's just a lot of different reasons that people escape in video games. And I think that even into adulthood, adulting is hard. I think that there's a lot of us that just feel that the video game escape still provides something that's lighthearted, and some of the topics today that we're going to cover is actually a way to continue building our relationships and our networks. And gaming had such a profound impact on many people's lives that video games as an escape was therapy to them. It was the way that they met their best friends. Gaming was the way that people met their spouses. I think that this is something that it was an amazing phenomenon. I don't think that people truly grasp what video games were going to do as an art, as a media, as an entertainment form. So I just want to open up the discussion with video games as an escape, and specifically, when did everybody first feel that video games was escape? I know, Sparky, you mentioned your story last time, so maybe we'll start with you. At what point did you feel that video game was an escape for you? And what is it for you now?
It's still kind of an escape for me now. Definitely a stress reliever. So when I get home from work, there's nothing I want to do besides just play video games. But I can't always. But I probably started to use it as back when my parents got divorced. Shortly after that, and that's when I started playing more because my parents get divorced, my dad moved out, then shortly after, my mom decided to move us to Missouri, of all places, and then
I heard it's really humid there.
It's horrible.
Just pronounce it Missouri.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
That's how you pronounce it.
It's
Missouri,
and so it's like then is when I started really getting into it, mostly playing Super Nintendo over and over again, and then when I finally was able to go live with my dad and move back home. My dad got me a PlayStation, and so everything's just downhill from then, and started my love with Sony.
Sony is, we'll talk about Sony a little bit later. Sony is a very defining element of our experiences, whether it was the PlayStation and playing old school games like Gex and Critical Depth was a random game that my cousins and I played back in the day. There's some random
Jumpin'
games.
Jack Flash.
Those were the Parappa the Rappa, right?
Frequency, amplitude.
Wipeout. Jetmoto.
Guitaru Man.
Crash Bandicoot.
Absolutely. For me, I mean, I also relate to the after work wind down, right? I think that it helps a lot. My wife and I will hop on, play a couple of games, whether it's right before bed or right after work or something, just to escape. And same as reasons why people watch Netflix or drink. I think that video games is just an outlet for people. Was it always an escape? Was it ever an escape for you, Tay, or do you feel that it was more of entertainment?
Yeah, it wasn't really an escape for me. It was more just, I don't know, like, it was entertainment, but I think it was for me, I've always enjoyed the stories they tell. And so, like, I've played a lot of, like, Final Fantasy games, which always had great stories and, just random things like that. Actually, lately, I think I play less when I'm more stressed.
Why is that?
I have no idea. I have other things to worry about. I don't have time to play video games.
Behavior suppression.
Yeah.
Have you tried it? It might help you.
It might, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't, when I'm stressed, I don't play. I work on other projects.
All right. Well, we're going to dive a little deeper into the topic of how video games impact our culture. But I first wanted to touch on a topic that we didn't get to touch on last, which really quickly want to talk about Sony and their PlayStation VR. Now, not all of us have experienced PlayStation VR.
I think I'm the only one that has.
Sparky might have been the only one that has. But I think that for the future of gaming and the future of technology, this is a big deal. This is something where, no different than how the Pokemon Go phenomenon kind of infiltrated people's lives, there's a huge potential that VR as a future platform can really change the way that we play games or the way that people are entertained, whether it's an escape for you if you think of things like Dot Hack or Sword Art Online, or it could be, more just entertainment, right? I mean, I think that you've seen a lot of YouTube videos of people giving PlayStation VR to their grandparents and seeing how they react and flail around the wands. Where do you feel PlayStation VR is after your experience with it, Sparky? Is it more on the entertainment side? Is it more of the escapism? Do you see that growing in that direction?
For me, it's more on the entertainment side. From what I've played of it, it's kind of hard for me to escape into it because it's all reclusive. It can't have other things going on. I'm a big multitasker. I like having other things going when I'm playing my games. Can usually play a game and watch a TV show at the same time, and I like that. But I can't do that when playing the VR because my eyes are completely drawn into the game, and I got the headphones in so I can hear, and so everything's just all inclusive, so I have to wait until times where I'm willing to just sit in there and be entertained for a few hours.
So leaning towards more immersive entertainment then, something where people are dedicated to sit down. And how long can you play a PlayStation VR game without, feeling nauseous?
It depends. I got nauseous only one time, and it's because I hadn't really eaten anything the day when I started playing it. For me, though, it's most of the time I stop playing is because I start getting hot myself. The equipment is heavy. It's a lot of stuff on your head, and so it does make you get pretty hot. And
what's the recommended playtime? Does Sony give you those alerts like Nintendo does? Hey, take a break.
I don't recall any.
They
They could be there. I just may have not noticed them or just taken out of them because I don't do that with the Nintendo ones either. I just block it out when Nintendo tells me to take a break. It's like, why don't you go play outside? It's like, no, I hate outside.
Yeah,
that's why I'm playing video games.
You don't know me, Nintendo. Don't tell me how to live my life. Go outside. Do you know what's outside?
Really?
UV rays and cancer.
A big problem with it, though, is you do have to have the space. It's like, I don't really have much space with my living situation right now, so it's hard for me to play some things like Job Simulator. I was playing it, wanted me to turn on my computer, but I couldn't reach down far enough to turn on my computer because I'm sitting on my bed and I can't move the controller farther deep than my bed, and it needed me to move farther down to turn on the computer.
You mentioned Job Simulator. What are the launch titles for PlayStation VR, and what would people be excited about to pick up?
I don't really know a lot of the launch titles. I know Job Simulator was a launch title. Riggs Mechanized Combat is one of my favorites. That was a launch title, and it's something like I've never been big on competitive gaming, but I might try to get into competitive gaming with Riggs because it's just that much enjoyable, and it's like combining sports with shooting people and robots, so it's a lot of fun.
That sounds like something I would be interested. Job Simulator, not so much.
Job Simulator is a lot more fun than it sounds.
Okay, because right now it sounds like shit. I come home from work. I do not want to go to work.
Yeah, you got these floating robots that fly around that tell you things. It's like, they come in, you start, and it's like, our data says that humans like to have nourishment of donuts and coffee for breakfast. Here's some donuts. You can pick up the donuts. You can actually just throw it at the robots and stuff. You can eat them. So it's one thing, you like actually have a coffee maker on your desk. So you just gotta take a cup, put it in there, push a button, it makes coffee, and you can dump it on the computer and watch it fry and stuff.
Okay, that sounds a little bit more interesting than...
It's called Job Simulator, but it's kind of like, here, do all the stuff you wanted to do in an office.
Mayhem Simulator.
Yeah, lost job.
It's closer to Goat Simulator than, okay. In the vein of that, that I can accept.
It's like they tell you to do things to move it along, but I've only played the demo of it, so they only let me play for like 5 minutes, and then the boss robot comes out, and everyone's like, oh, it's the boss, run, or you'll be stuck here for the weekend.
Oh, no. If you could just stay on Saturday, that would be great.
So we know the technology it's still new. It's still going to take a while to catch on. Do we feel that virtual reality is the next big thing? Do you think it's going to fade out like 3D? I'm glad that Tay was on the same page with me on that one. I think that it'll be interesting, right? Because I think the potential for virtual reality to be the next big thing is to truly have those experiences where you're playing an MMO in virtual reality. I think that if developers can truly make an experience that is that engaging, and we'll talk a little bit about sports, for example. We'll talk a little bit later about,
Wait, what? We're talking about sports?
Esports.
We'll get into it. I'm glad Sparky brought up rigs because I do want to talk about esports and kind of the future of gaming.
Is okay.
I feel
got
like
the E in front of it.
There is a market for the virtual reality. I don't think it's going to be where gaming's going to be headed, because I don't think you're ever going to be able to get rid of the console screen combination. Even with the Nintendo Switch, with them doing that, they still hook up to the TV. People are still going to hook up to TVs. But it's going to be like a separate market.
But what about these experiences that are coming out? For example, the last Ghostbusters movie, they had an experience in New York City. It was this really small launch experience, but it was in VR, and it was like a laser tag or adventure theme park experience where you wore this virtual reality headset and you were in the Ghostbusters universe.
You walk around around this maze and doing things, and that's where there's a good market for that. It's a great entertainment value. A lot of people like virtual reality. It's actually been around a lot longer than it has been, that people think it has been. But it's one of those things that's getting more popular. It's a separate market. Some gamers are going to like it, some gamers aren't.
And it does have clinical uses too.
It does.
We've been using virtual reality to treat individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder, so PTSD. Like that's been around for a while. It's been there's enough peer review research to say, hey, this really works for these individuals. There's a lot of new stuff coming out in terms of how to treat individuals with paralyzed limbs to try to regain some movement. So there's a lot of research coming out. It looks really, really neat, but it does run into the same problems that kept it from being as widespread, because there is sort of this uncanny valley that comes up with VR where you're just like, I'm not really as immersed. So you see some individuals manage to get over this. We're seeing a lot of these really cute videos come out of people playing VR games, like trying to climb something, but they miss and they start falling, and then they fall in real life. And we do see that people are getting fully immersed in these types of games. But
that's one of the nice things about the PlayStation VRs, because you're not walking around when you're using it.
Yeah.
It's like most times you're probably sitting down. You may be standing up if you want, but it's best for your own safety to be sitting down with it all. And it's not that hard to just put a chair right in the middle of the camera area to where you'll be in a good spot to be able to do everything.
Oh yeah, and they're making rigs because it looks like we can branch off into 2 different ways. VR in terms of sitting simulators, in which case you still have joystick types of movements, and then VR in terms of more holodeck type of deals. And they're coming up with nice rigs where they sort of do a suspension and you can walk in any direction, and sort of like a multi-directional treadmill type of setup, and that's really cool. But again, a lot of these things are fairly expensive, which cuts down on the very fast sort of turnaround that we see for smaller types of gaming experiences.
And that's a good thing about the PlayStation VR sits on the cheaper end of the virtual reality equipment.
Yeah.
And I like that you mentioned before that PlayStation VR can be used as a monitor of sorts. You just plug it in and use it. I really enjoy that, for a lot of people that can't travel, there are a lot of companies now that are going out there and recording some of the world's greatest landmarks. And, let's not go the doomsday scenario, but there are a lot of beautiful things out there that may not exist for much longer. And having companies go out there and record these natural beauties and putting it in a medium like that you could use in PlayStation VR is tremendous from an educational perspective. For those that just won't ever be able to travel those areas, maybe they're dangerous areas that you don't want the general public traveling, and being able to record that, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
And Tay, you don't sound like you're interested in VR whatsoever.
I just have no input on the matter. I don't know enough about it. I haven't ever used it. So I think it has potential. I think Sparky's right that it's going to be its kind of own separate market. I think we'll see a lot of kind of like laser tag type places pop up, but they'll all just be little VR obstacle course type things. Mm-hmm. But other than that, yeah, I think Sparky was pretty much right there.
All right.
Nothing to add.
Let's piggyback off of a previous thing you were talking about, Sparky, which is rigs as a sport. You played at the PlayStation Experience rigs. It is a sport where you're shooting things in mech units, and there's a basketball of some sort.
The one game I played of it, when I played at PlayStation Experience, was you go around and there's these orbs you collect to make yourself go into overdrive. And some orbs are just sitting there on the ground. You can also kill people, and all the orbs they had drops, and you can collect theirs. But once you go into overdrive, there's a little circle in the center of the ring that you have to run and jump into in order to score. And so whether your team wins or not is based off the actual scoring and not really how many people you kill.
That's good.
And so it's more...
And what was the team environment? Is it a 4v4, 3v3?
It was a 3v3.
3v3.
And you get there's different types of mechs that you can play. Like some of them are taller, that are faster, some are more defense-like, more on the offensive, and you can also, with all of them, switch around between the three to make yourself stronger in one area than the other. Like if you're being shot by a bunch of people, you could switch to the defense or the speed to get out of there quicker, or to help yourself not die as quickly.
Now, if you're in the gaming environment, in the gaming world right now, it's really hard to ignore the rise of esports. This idea that video games can now be a true sport. There's actual teams out there playing video games like CSGO. If anybody grew up in the Counter-Strike era, there are tournaments on things like Halo and Quake back in the day, and Doom. I mean, you can name all these first-person shooters. But there's also this huge surge, and again, it's been lasting for the last few years now with MOBAs, or multiplayer online battle arenas, with games like League of Legends. We just had the League of Legends Worlds here at the United States. I actually was down in LA and got to see Worlds, and it is absolutely amazing to see 20,000 people come into a country to watch these players play. It was a global experience. There were South Koreans, Germans, everybody that is invested in League of Legends was there celebrating. And it's really changed the way that we view traditional sports. We even have colleges now that are giving scholarships to people that want to pursue esports. How far do we feel this is going? Are we watching the future right now?
I think we are, especially since the studies have come out now saying that esports players accumulate the same stress levels as NASCAR drivers. So it is something that does create a lot of stress. Like, they're probably not burning through as much calories as NASCAR drivers because those cars get hot. But, it's getting up there that this is probably on par with the same stress level as NASCAR. So it's about the same as bowling, professional bowlers, professional race car drivers.
I'd say a little more than bowling.
You don't watch a lot of bowling, do you?
No, I don't. But I've been bowling, and I don't know if I classify it as a sport.
I know, like both of us don't, but Sparky, I
Nope.
know, has been in a league, so
That's true.
has differing opinions.
And his opinions are probably more accurate than my experiences. So,
So I think it'd be up on there, but I don't think it's gonna. Right, it's gonna be a long time before it can get to the levels of like
be in the Olympics.
MLB or the NFL.
You mentioned the Olympics. Actually, LA is vetting to be one of the Olympic cities, and it's actually looking into
Creating
esports arenas.
Nice.
Now, whether or not the IOC or would consider it, still the idea that LA is preparing for that is actually very interesting. I think another point to mention is esports has a lot of different genres. You've got first-person shooters. You have MOBAs like League of Legends, like Dota, like Heroes of the Storm. And you also have
Fighting games.
more casual. You've got the fighting games. I mean, even Rocket League to some point has some esports element to it. At the end of the day, it's about competing and that feeling of competition. I think something that drives people to esports is the fact that the average Joe can almost step in, and as long as they practice, as long as they play these games for hours and hours at a time, there's potential that they could be good at. No different than if you're practicing tennis, if you're practicing baseball. I think that is something that is different for this group of individuals that never consider themselves as athletes. That esports actually does have a lot of elements in improving vision, improving reaction times. I think that there's a lot of studies that can make esports, a traditional sport in 10, 20 years. So I'm really intrigued to see where it goes with that. I don't think anybody else here has played esports much. I know that Sparky played a little bit of Heroes of the Storm with me, and that was just, again, training wheel mode.
And just mostly because you wanted someone to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awesome game. You should try it out.
I played a little of Overwatch.
Let's talk about something like Overwatch. So BlizzCon just happened, and Overwatch had a World Cup. So instead of the traditional way of esports where there's teams from different regions and you play with your established team, Blizzard actually created the World Cup where it says you are representing your country at BlizzCon. So we had a team from Russia. We had the team from South Korea play in the finals. And it was a really cool format because you actually had to take these traditional teams, no different than like the Olympics, break up some of the team members and throw them on a team that represented your country. And Overwatch has been something that even if you don't play, you watch the memes or the artwork or you appreciate what Overwatch is. So as a consumer, talk to me about that. And would you be interested in watching competitive play of Overwatch because of its wide reach?
I've tried to watch people playing Overwatch. Yeah, it's a little tongue twister. For the most part, it's fine. The format I watched, they kept switching between the characters on their team like every 3 seconds, so it actually made me a little sick. But other than that, I mean, I wouldn't mind watching Overwatch. I'd rather play it, but I don't know if that's just me. I think that's what comes down to most of the esports is like I'd rather be playing them than watching them. But if you gave me an option between watching like football and esports, I would pick esports any day. No matter whatever they're playing, it's going to be more interesting than football.
You mentioned the World Cup with the Overwatch. Capcom does a similar thing with Street Fighter every year at the PlayStation Experience. They have the Street Fighter World Cup. And they do a similar thing to get people from all over the world represent their countries to fight in this tournament.
I will say something about esports that is truly impressive. When I was at Worlds for League of Legends, everybody there was there to support the sport. I think that when people bought tickets to Worlds, they weren't sure which teams were going to come up in the finals. It was SKT and Samsung, both South Korean teams, but literally the entire arena was supportive of those teams. I think in traditional sports, you would see more of, oh, I'm just a fan of this team or I'm just a fan of this region. But that really doesn't happen in esports. I think in esports, like Street Fighter, I think that when you go to EVO, you're truly just there to support the sport. Of course, there's going to be some athletes that are attractive to watch and go see, but it's more of an experience.
It's at that point now, but once it starts getting more popular and takes off, it will get to a point where people will have their own team. They'll be rooting for just their team. It's like with when football started in The Simpsons, they have a line saying, if we don't watch this, then if we don't support this, then it's never going to take off.
Now, what do you feel the implications of esports growth is going to have on our culture, our youth? Do you feel like there's going to be more kids out there that feel they don't need to be in traditional sports because there are cooler things out there like esports? Or do you think that esports just fulfills a specific group of players out there that love video games on a competitive nature?
I think more that, where you will still have kids who want to play baseball and basketball or football.
They're going to think those are cool because it's all a concept of perception.
It's constant perception and what you find, most entertaining. I mean, me as a kid, I loved playing video games. I didn't go out and play sports.
I did.
And my parents forced me to play some sports, but I didn't play the sports. Let's be honest. I would sit there and pick daisies while kids around me ran around kicking a ball.
You're picking daisies?
Yeah.
What sport was you picking daisies in?
It was either soccer or baseball or both. Probably both.
I did 1 year of t-ball when I was like 5.
Yeah, I did t-ball. Did basketball.
I mostly did basketball. I never did the pee-wee football, though.
Yeah, I never did football. My parents didn't make me do that, but I did do soccer, like I said. And if I had had the option as a kid to be like, hey, do you want to do this competitively, like video games, I'd have been like, yes, I do. And I'm not, like, even now, if you ask me right now, I wouldn't. I don't want to do that competitively, like to the point where I can compete with these big leaguer guys. But as a kid, I would have started training and gotten to the point where I could compete with those people and enjoyed it. Just like a kid who he picks up a basketball and goes, I'm going to be the next Michael Jordan kind of thing. Even though maybe, when he hits 30 or 20, he realizes, no, I'm not.
Michael Jordan, of course, being the only basketball player,
I know others, but they're all just from...
Name 3.
Karl Malone, John Stockton, Larry Bird...
Okay.
Kobe Bryant. I do know some sport names.
You are the #1 sports fan. I apologize.
After your second pick, I was going to say, is there any of those that weren't on the Jazz?
Most of them were, but that's the team that my family supported growing up because being from Salt Lake. So
I still support the Jazz.
Yeah.
I'll watch a game if I still can.
And what are your thoughts on esports becoming something that young adults can actually earn scholarship money on?
That's crazy to me.
I
mean, it makes sense, but...
I think it's a great idea. As someone that's struggling with paying student loans now, it's... The more ways for people to get scholarships, the better it is.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Better for the people, better for the country.
From a business perspective, I think it's a great idea. I mean, if you're looking at the ability to reach out to a demographic that has traditionally been very difficult to market to, esports is actually something that is reaching these individuals.
It's not something that's just been difficult to market to. It's something that's been also kind of shunned and pressed against. A lot of people have been trying to fight against video gaming itself, saying it causes violence and stuff, and trying to...
Which it doesn't.
Get a ban.
So it's intriguing and actually enlightening to me that companies like ESPN, companies like Samsung, these big name companies are now investing marketing dollars into esports. And so to have the colleges follow suit and say, hey, I want to be represented. I want to have our college team represented in these Twitch streams and have people follow our athletes. I think that's good for the colleges.
I think it is.
It comes down to, just like sports scholarships, is if it's something that can make the school more money, they're going to invest in it. And just like regular sports, esports are starting to make a lot of money. So they're going to get people there to do it.
Well, not only with the colleges starting to offer scholarships, that means high schools are going to start offering esports in them as well. And it's going to be a growing thing and kind of help put more money towards arts. because the schools are going to start wanting to put money into computers and stuff, which will help other arts classes within the school.
Now, there is an addicting factor of playing these video games. I mean, a great example is if you talk to the athletes from South Korea, they will tell you they wake up, they play the video games, they eat, they sleep, and they wake up again and they play these video games again. This is something that they have to practice. No different than if they were practicing any other sport.
It's very rigorous and tiring. It's one of the reasons why I personally have always tried to steer clear of being competitive, because when it gets to that point, it feels like work.
Yeah.
And when something feels like work for me, it stops being fun.
Well, let's go back to that aspect of escapism, though, right? I think that there's something that is really amazing that you can now provide video games as work. These are people that grew up, a lot of these esports athletes grew up, loved playing video games. They grew up as the outsider, like Tay, like you mentioned, you were picking daisies. They probably were doing the same thing because they didn't like traditional sports. They probably were an outsider, and in many cases, if you listen to some of their biographies, they were picked on. These were people that were not given attention to, and all of a sudden their advanced play in these games provided them with an outlet to do what they love, to be able to have their college tuition paid for doing something that they love. And not just the athletes themselves, but it's grown as a market. You now have esports casters, you have esports analysts, you have journalists that are covering esports. So something that we as adults, I think we struggle with, especially right now during quarter life crisis or midlife crisis, is you ask the question, are you doing what you love? And esports has created an industry that, again, this is a growing industry, and this isn't going away anytime soon. And all of a sudden, this entire group of young adults has an industry that they can actually do what they love. And what is that impact? I mean, I feel like a lot of us wish that it happened earlier, right?
Yeah. Like there was a comic I saw where it was this kid, probably our age, and he was playing, the NES, Super Nintendo. His dad comes in and says, "Stop playing that damn system, damn game. It's not going to do you any good in the future." And then this comic flash forwards to now, and he's sitting there on the couch with the dad, and they're talking, they say on the news, this esports person just brought in $2 million, and dad just looks at him and goes, "Why didn't you do that?" It's because our parents as kids a lot of times told us, "Hey, don't play too many video games."
Why don't you go outside and play?
Yeah, exactly. And I think our generation, when we people our age start having kids, it'll be different now because they can just be like, "Hey, if you really want to do the video games."
Sorry, but people in our generation have technically been having children for about 10 years right now.
Yeah.
So,
sorry. I mean, when their kids reach the age when we were being told by our parents, "Stop playing video games," they might be, "Hey, keep playing, play harder."
To be fair, as somebody who wrote my in between my master's and my PhD, my comp was on the effects of video game play. Yes, there are plenty of wonderful things. There are increases in we call it a useful field of view, so the ability to see things in your peripheral vision without moving your eyes, and that's very helpful for things like driving. You want to make sure that you see that pedestrian jumping out in front of your car a lot sooner than maybe when they get closer to the center of your eyes. So ideally, there are some great things that come from playing video games. There are some bad things, just like everything else. There are, and with the problem with the video games and violence is they can show that video games increase aggression if you operationally define aggression as playing a loud, obnoxious tone to an opponent. So
very easy to get salty playing these games.
Yeah. So and that is something that happens, and it does actually turn out that the effects and the benefits do depend on what type of game that you're playing, whether it's an action video game, in terms of violent video games, if there is a cooperative action. So there are some studies that find that you might be able to mitigate some of the aggression as long as the game has sort of a capture the flag or like a teamwork or some mode that supports cooperation. So it really does depend on the type of game and how you're willing to define aggression operationally. But there are some definite benefits. Shout out to my PhD, which was published a few months ago. So, no, and by a few months ago, I mean like the beginning of this year.
You are a doctor and a published writer.
Yeah, so technically, my dissertation is on something that is very relevant to this, but on the other hand, I'm salty as hell about esports being as big as it is right now, going through my entire childhood being told I was not a true gamer because I was female, and that I only knew about games because I must have watched my boyfriend play them. And now watching people play video games is acceptable, whereas before it was just an insult to to sort of ruin your cred as a gamer. So I'm pretty salty as hell that this is something that's becoming more and more appropriate. It's just like, fine, watch other people play.
Yeah, I think I'm more on the salty element as well. I think that, had this come a little sooner, I might have actually taken a completely different career path. But as a businessman, I think that anything that we can do to support the growth of esports, there's still a lot of work to be done. Coming to regulations and all the different games, right now it's controlled by the developers. Is there going to be an element of organization? You have some leagues like MLG, etc., that have specific leagues out there, but there's going to be a lot of details that need to be understood as it grows. But certainly love esports. And on that topic, to wrap up our last topic, is I wanted to talk about how video game culture truly has come to a pinnacle. We had BlizzCon. BlizzCon was this past weekend in Anaheim, California, and it celebrated its 10th anniversary. So BlizzCon, this was its 10th con, and Blizzard as a company itself has celebrated 25 years. So many of us, we remember those 25 years, right? I think that not everybody played Rock and Roll Racing and Lost Vikings, but Blizzard as a company has truly provided a lot of memorable franchise games, no different than Nintendo. We talked heavily about Nintendo last podcast, and I want to really talk about Blizzard. And I think that when you look back at the games like Warcraft, StarCraft, everybody knows about World of Warcraft. I think World of Warcraft was one of the first games that made gaming cool. All of a sudden, you had these celebrities admitting that they played World of Warcraft. That MMORPG was just something that took gaming to a completely different level. And for a company like Blizzard to been able to exist for 25 years, started with a small group of guys, and now grown to a big company, acquired by a big company like Activision, that now hundreds and hundreds of individuals can do what they love and experience what they love. These fans are cosplaying, they are competitively playing in these tournaments at BlizzCon, they are buying up merchandise and retail at levels that you would if you were going to Disneyland. It's truly become something outside itself. I think that we do need to give credit to these companies. There's other companies like Riot all of a sudden with League of Legends and all the characters that they're creating and all the merchandise that they can create. And at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing that came out of it is if you go to one of these cons and listen to the stories, you will hear these attendees talk about how video games changed their life. They'll talk about how they met their spouses by playing video games, by being encompassed in these things. They'll talk about how it saved their lives. These games that provided an escape to these individuals saved their lives. And in forward, they've become better people about it. They're more inclusive. They're more accepting of a very diverse group of people. There isn't as much animosity as there is in the overall world. I think if you look at nerd culture and the gaming culture, we're a lot more accepting of each other and we're a lot more kind and depending on I think that
someone's avoiding comment sections.
There is still a lot of ways to go. We know that it's needs to be more less sexist. more diverse in certain areas. There's already ways that we're going to improve that, but I did want to touch on how it does change lives, and I mean, what are some of the stories that you've heard in your lifetimes and talking to your friends that companies like Blizzard really provided something completely different and unique? I know myself, I spent a lot of hours playing StarCraft, playing Diablo, and while my parents were at work and didn't have time to spend time with me, or I didn't have a lot of friends growing up because the neighborhood was scary to go outside. Everything outside was going to cause cancer, so I had to stay indoors. I think that for me, it provided an environment where I could push my brain. Strategy games were something that I just loved in terms of problem solving. I think that it really made me a different individual because of it. And I'm just super proud of these companies being able to survive and succeed. I think they are the next Disneys. I think these companies really are an art form now. And for all of us that appreciate movies, that's something that's just different. Just nod your head. That's all you're going to say to that.
Well done. Sit a while and listen.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've had anything to do with Blizzard, and quite honestly, my relationship with Blizzard is less than happy. So, I'm not happy with Blizzard. But I guess Diablo 2 was fine.
I might start playing Diablo 3 now that they're going to put Diablo 1 inside of Diablo 3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yo, dog, I heard you like Diablo, so let me put my Diablo in your Diablo so you can Diablo while you Diablo.
Yeah, for me, Blizzard, like I said, I played the Overwatch demo, but before that, I hadn't played any Blizzard since Warcraft 3, a little bit of that, StarCraft.
Hey, I played Warcraft 3.
Yeah, Warcraft 2 I loved, but...
Wait, I might have only played Warcraft 2.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's been a while.
I think,
now.
if I remember, I bought Warcraft 3, and then, like, the only computer it would work on was my dad's, like, work computer, and he wouldn't let me do it. So I didn't play it. It's like I let my brother borrow it for the longest time because he didn't live at home, and I don't think he ever gave it back. So he got a free game out of that.
That's kind of how I got my copy of Portal 2.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these developers that are mainstream now, and we talk about these big companies that don't provide as much individualism anymore because they're all about trying to make the money. Do you think that that's the only way for these video game companies to survive, is to be mass market?
No, because I think a lot of the companies that have gone that route, who have stopped paying attention to the gamers and what we want, they're the ones who are failing. That they're the ones producing the AAA games that when you get them, you go, "This is not a AAA game. This is barely a game."
Like No Man's Sky.
Yeah. Well,
that was definitely mass marketed to people. It was one of the most anticipated games from E3 in like 2014 it was.
Yeah.
And like they kept pushing to get it. The first two PlayStation experience, they talked about a lot of the E3 last year, and when it finally came out, it was just a big flop.
So,
but I'm also like Assassin's Creed, suffers from that. Like the first one came out of nowhere, people loved it. Second one they improved, and then after that they started just mass producing them one a year, and they were just got off.
They care more about just getting it out than actually putting in
it's like
work to make it.
It's a move.
The opposite of Valve, which puts out really high quality games, but oh god,
it takes forever.
You have to wait forever.
Which I mean, a lot of the things are worth the wait, but like, come on, guys, just.
When we're gonna get Portal 3?
Right, Portal 3, Left 4 Dead 3,
Half-Life 3. They just can't. They don't know how to do.
They don't like threes.
Yeah, they're like trinities are horrible. Let's not do that. No.
Threes are bad luck with Valve.
Yeah. But back to the point. I think that's the problem. Like, if they are personal, if they are paying attention to them, their fans, then taking their time, not worrying about timelines and budgets and, only making money, then I think they do really good stuff. Blizzard, I think, is pretty good at that for the most part. The one that they got famous for, it's my opinion, their worst thing they've ever made. But
my only problem with WoW is like I would get too distracted with the job systems. It's like I'd be playing with people and I'd be like, ooh, a flower, and I'd just run off, and then I'd be getting killed, and people are like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm getting a flower.
Yeah, I mean, I played WoW, and I think a lot of us have WoW experiences that are equally negative as they are positive.
not positive for me.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
they're huge time sinks. Obviously, the MMORPGs they're meant to be that, and they've always been that way. But to know these games like WoW, like StarCraft, like Diablo, I think Blizzard did a good job of creating an atmosphere where they can get community feedback and release patches to change the game. A lot of the big A titles, like you mentioned, Assassin's Creed and etc., very rare would they actually release a patch that would fix things or keep these games going. They're already on to the sequel, right?
They'll give you DLC you have to pay for to fix it.
That's the thing with WoW, is like now it's like almost a completely different game than it was when they first released it.
Oh yeah, they've changed the artwork, the textures, everything is upgraded.
I played WoW when it was first released, and my first thought of it was, it's EverQuest going to the prom. It's like just like EverQuest, only it just looks nicer. It's all dressed up, it looks pretty, and then several years later, started dating a girl that played it a lot, so I started playing it with her, and I got more into it then. And it was a lot different, it was a lot better, I enjoyed it a lot more, and then I stopped after I stopped dating her.
Yeah.
And the flowers.
Yeah, I can definitely understand if these interactions, the games have really personal stories attached to a lot of them, good or bad. But I do feel that it's just really interesting on how us as adults, some of these games truly are ways that we can continue to keep in touch with our friends, our family members, etc. I think that the Blizzard team talk a lot about how Dungeons and Dragons influence their games a lot, and how, being able to play these type of games with their friends, even though they live in different cities, in different countries, that you can still have something that you love and you can play together. And it becomes something that is global. It's no different than this group. I mean, we used to spend a lot of time gaming together and playing games like Portal, games like Borderlands that were multiplayer. And I think when you're talking about multiplayer, Blizzard's done a good job of that in their career. Right, wrong, or indifference, I think that other video games can, do a little bit better to embrace multiplayer play. I think No Man's Sky, to your point, they always talked about these chances of interacting with other people, and it really didn't play out the way that you were expecting to. So, I mean, these are opportunities. All right, well, that's all the time that we have for our group chat with Tay Plays today. Thank you again for listening, and please comment below if there's any future topics you'd like us to address. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
So long.
Toodles.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos by us, click the thumbnails. It should take you to one of our latest video antics. And, as always, be sure to like and subscribe to help us out. Or you can click here to support us over at Patreon to help us create even more quality content. Until next time, thanks again for watching.